Yes, 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 I see, I see. Πρέπει να κάνουμε κάποια δοκιμή με την διερμηνέα μας, πιστεύετε? Κύριε Παπακοσταντίνου, μου ακούτε, Θέλετε να κάνουμε μια δοκιμή, να δούμε αν ακούει ο συγγραφέας αυτά που λέω εγώ τώρα στα ελληνικά, στα αγγλικά? Το ποιο κανάλι δηλαδή, το δεύτερο? Το ένα, το πρώτο. It is the one, channel one for English. Okay. Now, τώρα με ακούει στα αγγλικά προφανώς, ο συγγραφέας. You hear me in English? You hear English translation? No? Just check. The second one?
Maybe it should be louder.
Like to me?
Number one.
Okay.
Yes, it's okay.
It's okay? Great. Μπορούμε να αρχίσουμε. Τι ώρα είναι? Θα χάσει την αίσθηση του χρόνου. Ναι. Καλησπέρα σας, καλώς ήρθατε. Αρχίζουμε. Ευχαριστούμε που είστε εδώ, απόψε μαζί μας, για να παρουσιάσουμε το πιο πρόσφατο μυθιστόρημα του Σλοβαίνου συγγραφέα Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ στα ελληνικά, ακόμα και ο έρωτας. Πρωτού συστηθούμε πιο έτσι εκτεταμένα, θα δώσω το λόγο στην κυρία Πρέσβη της Δημοκρατίας της Σλοβενίας για να πει δύο λόγια σχετικά με την εκδήλωση αυτή.
Kalispera, good evening, dober večer, Mr. Bekos, spoštovani gospod Jančar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to be here today at this event, and I wish at the outset to thank Castagnotis Editions for organizing with us this event. It is also my great honor to welcome one of the greatest Slovenian authors, Mr. Drago Jančar, at the 20th International Thessaloniki Book Fair. On the occasion, as Mr. Beko said, of the publishing of his book, of the Greek translation of his book, and Love Itself, Akoma ke Erotas. At the outset, I wish to thank you once again and all your team for the cooperation. Let me just say a couple of introductory words. It has been an extremely productive year for the Embassy of Slovenia, this first half of the year. We have had a very fruitful cooperation on the political level between Slovenia and Greece, which culminated in the visit of the Slovenian president, Mrs. Pirc Musar, in April, at the invitation of the Greek president, Sakalaropoulou. And both presidents at the time addressed the Delphi Conference, Economic Forum. But today's evening and event is not about politics, it is about arts and literature. So I wish to stress that the Slovenian language, art and culture have been and have always had an immense importance for the Slovenian nation and have contributed decisively to the perseverance of our nation throughout centuries, even during times where Slovenia did not have its established statehood. So the embassy is always very pleased to welcome Slovenian artists in Greece, talented Slovenian artists. In February, for example, we have hosted two Slovenian musicians, young Muslim musicians in the Piraeus Municipal Theatre. And today we have a great honor to host one of the most established contemporary Slovenian authors and European novelist of great standing, Mr. Drago Jančar. Mr. Jančar's books have been translated in more than 20 languages worldwide, including Greek. And we are immensely pleased that he has accepted our invitation and Castagnotis' invitation to be here today. And yesterday we had an evening in Athens at the Epilepsy bookstore. Tomorrow, another Slovenian author who is also sitting here among the audience, Mr. Šarotar, will present his book Panorama with the Vaxicon publishers. So let me say that in his prolific career, Mr. Jančar has written not only novels, but also short stories, essays, and plays. And Love Itself, a book which he's presenting today at this book fair. The title of this book has been taken from Lord Byron's poems and has already received several awards in Slovenia and in Austria. It is a compelling novel with topical messages for today's international environment. I will just have a short quote, and then I will leave the floor to Mr. Jančar and Mr. Bekos. From his book, of course. Love conquers all distances. Love conquers all, except war. War defeats all, especially those who fight, and those who simply wait for it to be over. So I thank you for your patience. I'll give you the floor, Mr. Bekos, Mr. Jančar, and thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ την κυρία Πρέσβη της Δημοκρατίας της Σλοβενίας, την κυρία Ποζάρ. Θέλω να ξεκινήσω, θα σας πω πώς θα γίνει η κουβέντα. Εγώ ερωτώ στα ελληνικά, ο κύριος Γιάντσαρ απαντά στα αγγλικά και ακούτε τη διερμηνία από την διερμηνέα μας, την κυρία Νίκη Παπακοσταντίνου, που είναι στο βάθος. Θα δώσω πρώτα το λόγο στον Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ για ένα σύντομο χαιρετισμό εδώ, να μας πει λίγο πώς νιώθει που είναι και στη Θεσσαλονίκη και μετά θα μπούμε κατευθείαν στο ψητό, καθώς λέμε.
Okay, thank you. After 2 books in your beautiful country, I feel like at home. I'm not for first time also in Thessaloniki. I was once already on the book fair and many times in Athens. So I feel good, I feel happy. I'm happy that I have also an audience here. I hope that some of these people who are listening to us will also read our books. Yes. Nothing else to say.
Θέλω να ξεκινήσω λέγοντας, φίλες και φίλοι, ότι σήμερα στη Θεσσαλονίκη έχει έρθει ένας πολύ σημαντικός συγγραφέας, όχι μόνο για τη Σλοβενία, διότι δεν υπάρχει πολύ μεγάλη αμφισβήτηση ότι είναι ο κορυφαίος συγγραφέας της Σλοβενίας, πολύ βραβευμένος, πολύ μεταφρασμένος. Ο Γιάντσαρ είναι και ένας πολύ σημαντικός συγγραφέας για την Ευρώπη και όχι μόνο για την κεντρική Ευρώπη, όπου συνήθως τοποθετεί τα μυθιστορήματα που γράφει. Θα ξεκινήσω, αν μου επιτρέπει ο Ντράγκο, περιγράφοντας τι είναι αυτό το βιβλίο. Το πιο πρόσφατο βιβλίο που είναι αυτό εδώ. Λέγεται «Ακόμα και ο έρωτας». Το έχει μεταφράσει η Λόης Καβαγιανού από τα σλοβενικά στα ελληνικά, όπως και το προηγούμενο βιβλίο του που έχουμε εκδώσει στις εκδόσεις Καστανιώτη, το «Αυτή τη νύχτα την είδα». Πραγματικά μια εξαιρετική μεταφράστρια ίδια. Θα πω μόνο 2 λόγια για αυτό το βιβλίο. Αυτό το βιβλίο διαδραματίζεται το 1941. Το 1941 όταν εδραιώνεται η ναζιστική κατοχή στην Σλοβενία. Στην πόλη του Μάριμπορ, όπου έχει γεννηθεί ο Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ, η πόλη του Μάριμπορ μετονομάζεται σε Μάρμπουργκ. Είχε βέβαια και γερμανικό παρελθόν. Εν πάση περιπτώσει, σε αυτό το βιβλίο παρακολουθούμε στη διάρκεια της γερμανικής κατοχής του Μάριμπορ στη Σλοβενία 3 χαρακτήρες. Τη Σόνια, έναν αξιωματικό του γερμανικού στρατού, τον SS, τον Λούντβιχ ή Λούντεκ, και έναν παρτιζάνο, ο οποίος έχει μια ερωτική σχέση με τη Σόνια, τον Βαλεντίν. Αυτοί είναι οι 3 χαρακτήρες που παρακολουθούμε σε αυτό το μυθιστόρημα του Γιάντσαρ, που έχει πάρει για 4η φορά, 4η ναι, το βραβείο Κρέσνικ στη Σλοβενία, που είναι το πιο σημαντικό βραβείο που δίνουν οι Σλοβαίνοι κάθε χρόνο εκεί. Το ιδιαίτερο σε αυτό το βιβλίο είναι ότι ακόμα και το εξώφυλλό του είναι μέρος της αφήγησής του. Και θέλω να ξεκινήσει από αυτό ο Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ, να μας πει πώς συνδέεται αυτό το εξώφυλλο με ένα ολόκληρο μυθιστόρημα.
This is okay. I think this is an important question. This cover sounds a little boring. It's gray, it's white and black. It's from an ancient time, from 30s, for instance. But I insisted to be this picture, this photograph, which is really, in reality, a postcard from my hometown. From year 42 or 43. So when I received this cover, it was also boring for me to looking at just one postcard. But then I would look a little more cautiously on this photograph, and I saw two girls are speaking some here in the corner in one city, apparently Central European city, my city. But then I thought, okay, doesn't matter because they cannot see it. And then I saw a German soldier in the corner of this photograph. And when I researched a little, I saw that it is an officer, an SS officer. So from this pastoral picture of one Central European square where people are walking, talking, etc., we are suddenly in the middle of the war. And I was excited when I was thinking about this. And then in that moment, I really started to write a novel. In that moment grew from my memory everything what I was listening in the year after the World War II. I was born after the war, but our parents, one generation before, was involved in the most terrible war in European history. It is World War II. And so I was listening all the time, all my youth, about occupation of the city, about partisans in the woods, about terror of Gestapo in my city, etc., etc. But for me, was in that time, this was a distant history, like one diluvial story. I didn't want to have to do nothing with this. Until the war in Yugoslavia broke out. Then I was in Sarajevo with group of colleagues, with group of writers, and I saw the war from near vicinity, and things were somehow different. So in that time, I also discovered this photographer, and so I knew that I didn't know that I will write about this, but in that moment I decided to write about everything what I knew, the partisans, I knew the men, the people the guys who were mobilized in German army, died in Russia, in cold days of Russia or in Northern Africa, etc. I knew both people from both. Maribor was city which was with mixed population, German and Slovenian. So I knew also reliquiarum, some remains of German minority in the city, etc. So everything was suddenly in my, and everything was the whole time in my consciousness. It was waiting for something, and it was waiting for this photography. When I saw this photography, I started to write the novel. And it's novel about love in war. As Mrs. Ambassador said, that love conquers everything, love conquers all, but not the war, unfortunately.
Θέλω να σας πω ότι πριν έρθουμε σήμερα στη Θεσσαλονίκη με τον συγγραφέα, ο Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ συζήτησε χτες στην Αθήνα με τον Αναστάση Φιστονίτη, ποιητή κριτικό του Βήματος στην Αθήνα, και έκανα μια πάρα πολύ ωραία κουβέντα σε σχέση με το βιβλίο, την οποία παρακολούθησα και εγώ με ενδιαφέρον. Σκέφτομαι πώς ακριβώς, μάλλον θέλω να το κάνω ευθέως το ερώτημα στον Ντράγκο, επειδή υπήρχε αυτός ο προβληματισμός για το τι είναι ένα ιστορικό βιβλίο, τι είναι ένα ιστορικό μυθιστόρημα. Ποια πιστεύει ότι είναι η διαφορά ανάμεσα, σε σχέση με το βιβλίο του πάντα, έτσι, πώς δουλεύει ένας ιστορικός, κατά τη γνώμη του, ή τι φαντάζεσαι, πώς δουλεύει ένας ιστορικός και πώς δουλεύει ένας μυθιστοριογράφος σε έναν τέτοιο καμβά.
Thank you. I don't believe that in the real literature exists something like historical novel. Okay, it exists genre about, I don't know, some French courtesans or Venetian courtesans, etc. It is possible. But if you write or read the real literature, historical novel is is always also contemporary novel. People are not changing so much. If I'm writing about in this novel or in this novel too before about their passions, their hatreds, their love, their everything. I'm writing about myself. I'm writing about contemporary feelings of understanding of the world. This is one side of the story, and another side is also if we are talking about the war, about World War II, it's not as I thought when I was very young, that it is so distant, this war. We saw the war in Yugoslavia. We are now seeing what's going on around us, what's going in Ukraine, what's going on Middle East, and we are all living with a kind of I don't know, tension in the air with some uncertainty in our souls. We don't know what will happen. Of course, we are not so afraid that it will break out tomorrow, but somehow we are always in the kind of war atmosphere. I'm sure that in Greece is something what is similar like in Slovenia. You can imagine one distant village somewhere in Slovenian mountains, and they are living out of far away from the big cities, etc. But in this village, some family or some people survived in Slovenia, in my country, 5 states also. But besides this, they were moving from this village different armies, different police officers, different people who collected taxes, and so on and so on. So the century of ideologies, of national hatred, so everything reflected in one small village somewhere in the mountains. The same happened, I don't know, in some Greece island or in the continental Greece. So, and if back to the former question, if we speak about history, we are talking always writers, we are talking about individuals, and history is not something what is abstract. Politics is not abstract. It's always connected to fate of an individual person. And this is why this is important. And this gray color is suddenly, when somebody writes it this way, it's this gray cover is suddenly full of colors, colors of love, colors of hatred. It's red and blue and gray, green and everything. What comes through our imagination, of course.
Θέλω να ρωτήσω σκέφτομαι τώρα που λέει αυτό το πράγμα ο Γιάντσαρ, ότι η δουλειά του συγγραφέα προφανώς δεν είναι να μας πει σε αυτές τις πολύ οριακές στιγμές, γιατί είναι ένα μυθιστόρημα που μιλάει για οριακές στιγμές, δεν περιμένουμε από τον συγγραφέα, από ένα καλό συγγραφέα εννοώ, να μας δώσει μια άσπρη εκδοχή των πραγμάτων ή μια μαύρη εκδοχή των πραγμάτων. Οπότε το γκρι που είναι ανάμεσα στα δύο ίσως είναι πιο ταιριαστό για αυτά που συμβαίνουν στους ήρωές σας μέσα σε αυτό το μυθιστόρημα νομίζω.
But what is the question?
Oh, the question is whether θα το πω στα ελληνικά ξανά. Το ερώτημα είναι ουσιαστικά αφού η ιστορία είναι οι ζωές αυτών των 3 ηρώων, αν ως ιστορία μπορούμε να θεωρήσουμε αυτά που συμβαίνουν σε αυτούς τους 3 ή τη σχέση αυτών των 3, να το πω πιο απλά.
So, I must, first of all, I must say that this novel is completely invented. Yeah. It is imagined. It didn't happen in reality. For instance, this book, which was previous, this novel was written on the real events which happened at the end of war. In Slovenia, somewhere I discovered it in some historical chronicle, etc. And then I wrote a book with a lot of imagination, but in general, the basic events are real. In these books, they are not. It's a mixture of that memories that I mentioned before, a mixture of people that I knew, and of course, many things I just invented, and so I wanted to have relations. When I saw this picture, I started with this. What they are talking? These two girls on this corner, and I decided that one of them asked to another, "Do you know this officer? This man who is passing by? Isn't he somebody that we knew before?" And so we discovered that this guy they knew him, they were living in the same city, but suddenly, not suddenly, but by step, he became a German officer. So one of the girls, Sonia, who is the main hero in the novel, her boyfriend is in the Gestapo prison. And so these two girls decided that they will ask this German officer named Ludek, was the Slovenian name for him, but that is Ludwig. They will ask him if he could help to get out the boy from the Gestapo prison. And this is the beginning of the novel, which leads us through the city full of terror, full of violation, and through the through the woods where partisans are there, in the concentration camps back in Slovenia. So I don't want to I cannot, because it's a long novel. I cannot, and I don't want to. I don't want to spoil and to explain everything.
But, θα ήθελα όμως εγώ να προσθέσω κάτι σε σχέση με αυτό που είπε ο συγγραφέας για το προηγούμενο βιβλίο του, που είναι αυτό εδώ το βιβλίο. Θα σας το δείξω. Λέγεται «Αυτή τη νύχτα την είδα». Θα σας περιγράψω εγώ συνοπτικά τι γίνεται εδώ. Πάλι στα μέσα της δεκαετίας του 40, σε ένα παραμυθένιο πύργο κάπου στη Σλοβενία, ζει ένα πολύ παράξενο ζευγάρι και μια ηρωίδα, η Βερόνικα Ζάρνικ, που έχει ως κατοικίδιο ένα κροκοδιλάκι. Φανταστείτε μια γυναίκα να έχει κατοικίδιο ένα κροκοδιλάκι και όχι ένα σκυλάκι, ας πούμε. Κάποια στιγμή το ζεύγος αυτό εξαφανίζεται και μετά έχουμε μια πολυφωνική αφήγηση, διαφορετικοί χαρακτήρες δίνουν την εκδοχή τους για το τι συνέβη στο ζεύγος που μυστηριωδώς εξαφανίστηκε. Θέλω να ρωτήσω τον Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ αν είναι σωστή η εντύπωση που έχω ότι σε αυτά τα δύο βιβλία ο πυρήνας, ο πιο κεντρικός από τους κεντρικούς πρωταγωνιστές, είναι γυναίκες. Και οι δύο. Στη μία περίπτωση είναι η Βερόνικα, στην άλλη είναι η Σόνια.
Yes, it's true. Sonia, in both books, women are the main heroes. Yes. In the first book, I saw her that night. We have 5 persons, and all of them they are speaking about her. So she is coming out from their explanations, their memories, like a kind of a documentary story. Her life, her extraordinary life, a little how to say extravagant life, and through the war again, through the war times till the end. And in this story, we have 2 men who are fighting for their ideas. For one side, we have that German officer who converted from Slovenian to German nationality. There were very many cases in Slovenia because we are living on the border with mixture population, which was divided through the century, through the nationalistic movements and so on. And so he decided first for German national, that he is German, not Slovenian, but then step by steps he became a Nazi, and then officer, and then Gestapo officer, etc. there are such cases in many cases like this in our history. And on the other hand, we have young geograph, a student who is a Christian socialist. He joined Liberation Front when everything started. Step by step, he is moving towards communism because communists took over this Liberation Front during the war. And he's fighting for liberation and also for his ideas. So we have two men fighting for their ideas, their ones against other, etc. Wanted to defeat each other, to kill each other, etc. But in the middle, we have the woman who is, I wouldn't say that she is not interested in this because she often says in the novel what are her ideas. Of course, he is also against occupation, etc. But her main idea is to preserve the love, to preserve the relations with this boy who is in Gestapo prison first and later in partisans, etc. So she is fighting on her way, on her own way against the war. She's not pacifist or something like this, but she just wants to preserve her beautiful relationship. In first chapters of a novel, we have a lot of poetry. They are young lovers. They are sending here and fro their the quotations of a poets, etc. And we have a quotation of poet also in the title of the book. So she is main hero in this novel somehow. Even it sounds unusual, but it is.
Θέλω να, φυσικά, απλά ήθελα να το επισημάνω ότι εδώ διαβάζουμε δύο βιβλία τα οποία είναι για μια σκοτεινή περίοδο της Ευρώπης, έτσι, στο Δεύτερο Παγκόσμιο Πόλεμο, αλλά οι πιο θετικοί χαρακτήρες είναι γυναικοί. Καλό είναι αυτό να το επισημαίνουμε που και που. Θέλω να πω επίσης ότι ο τίτλος είναι από ένα στίχο του Byron, από ένα ποίημα του Byron, και θέλω να μου πει και λίγο γι' αυτό ο Ντράγκο Γιάντσαρ. Τον άκουσα να λέει στην Αθήνα ότι θα ήθελα να γράφω ποίηση, αλλά δεν τα καταφέρνω. Δεν τα κατάφερα, μάλλον. Στην πραγματικότητα τα καταφέρνει μέσω της πεζογραφίας. Και εδώ θέλω να το ρωτήσω κάτι. Η πρώτη ερώτηση αφορά τον Byron. Α, ναι. Θα πρέπει να διακόψουμε για 1 λεπτό, γιατί 2 λεπτάκια, γιατί έχουμε ένα θέμα με τη διερμηνία, μου λένε εδώ τώρα.
Can you, μπορείτε να πάτε να πείτε...
Μέχρι να το λύσουμε. Εγώ για...
Can you hear me in channel 2? Okay, good. Okay, yep.
Σ' ακούει, είναι εντάξει?
Yeah.
Οπότε όταν είναι να αλλάξετε γλώσσα θα το
No,
πατάτε
we can
εσείς, έτσι?
continue. Can you please tell the speaker to
Ωραία, θα το πατάτε
continue?
εσείς,
Yep.
έτσι?
Yeah. Yep. So I'm asking two things. Why did you choose this line by Byron to be the title for your book? And the second question is about the relationship you're having with poetry. How is it possible this style of the book to have both something very dark, you might see something very dark, Nazist and so on, and at the very last word of this line you see some lyric and beautiful. How can these two things be combined, and how do you think of these two?
For this observation, it's very important for this novel, and thank you that you have realized this. Maybe a word about the title. In my personal life, I wouldn't say that I'm a very shy person, but I don't like to to say word love, or even in letter, even in personal life, etc. I'm somehow embarrassed, etc. I was doing this on other way, not with words love. There are many other words, yes. And but when I was in this story, I didn't see other solution. I remembered that I was in my when I was in middle school, in my ages of 17, 18, etc. I was really touched with the Byron poem, and we are no more roving, etc. It's a beautiful poem about a couple who is falling apart. Their love is falling apart. So I couldn't help myself that I put part of this poetry in, or this verse rhyme on the front page, on the title of the book. But there is another reason. These two lovers, as I have mentioned before, they are in the first stage of this story. Because they are studying in different cities, one in Ljubljana and the other one is Graz. She started to study medicine, etc. And they are sending them some here and there love letters, and it's full of a poetry from that time. I researched a little what young people were reading in that time, and that was a lot of Czech poetry, some German poetry, etc. And so they were using this and English poetry also. So, and I couldn't resist then at the end not to put this title, even it sounds a little problematic. I believe for a reader, because it could sound a part kitschy, I'm afraid, but okay, love is not a kitschy. Love, if we are making it kitschy, is kitsch, but it's if you are talking about the serious things about this, it is not. And maybe also some reader who expect some cheap literature could start the book and will be disappointed, and the other one who will see this title will say it is something cheap, I am not going to read it. So it was really a risky decision to put this title. But it's happened so, and I cannot change it now. And I don't want to change it, of course.
Θέλω απλώς να πω ότι ο στίχος του Byron
This Byron's verse says that even love itself needs to rest. This is what Byron says. Lois Papagiannou translated that in Greece. Now, my second question about the style that might combine both the dark and the light of lyrism in poetry, especially in a condition like this.
So, this question, which was essential, I was so in love with my title of love that I forgot what I have to say about this. Yes, it's the most important stylistic question of this novel: how to join beauty of a relationship between two young men and the cruelty and darkness of this period of human history. So I tried my best with the language, with the words, with the sentences, with the changing of sets where things are going. For instance, we have a situation when Valentin, that young partisan in prison, they caught him when he was drunk. Yes, he is. That is maybe funny situation, but they caught him in this way, and that there are such a situation in the war, in the fighting, etc. And when he is in the prison, he is alone. He is in the cell. He is closed, and he is thinking about how they are walking in May Day on the hills around the city of Maribor. Everything is splendid, beautiful, light, etc. So we have in one scene, in one situation, both darkness of prisoner's cell and beauty of their walk through the hills around the city.
Χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ για αυτή την απάντηση, διότι ακριβώς αυτό έχω κατά νου και αυτό νομίζω έχω γράψει.
I'm very happy with your answer. This is what I had in mind, and that's what I wrote at the back cover, that we have this alternating style, this style that is in rotation. This is extremely interesting from a literary point of view, but I'd like to ask you something more broad. Slovenia is a country that, if you see it at the map, finds itself in the very heart of Europe. It is in Central Europe, but Slovenia isn't only Central Europe, it's many things. It is both Central Europe, it is also Balkans. And in your case, I wonder, how does an author of a small country, Slovenia, and Greece is also a small country. So how does an author who is in Slovenia and writes in Slovenia, how does that author feel about the past on the one hand and the present? Does he feel that he is in the periphery? Does he feel divided and split because he steps both he finds himself both in Central Europe and in the Balkans?
It's a very often question in Slovenia and also in former Yugoslavia, whom we belonged actually. So there is an anecdote that last year I was informed that I will receive in Skopje the Balkan Prize for Art of Prose. But they asked me before, would you accept this because you Slovenians, you consider Central Europeans, and will you accept Balkan Prize? And I said,
That's an issue then,
and
yes.
I'm happy with if I can have it. Actually, I survived the whole my life, except last 20 or 30 years. I survived. I was living in Yugoslavia, which was mostly Balkan state. And I had many connections with friends in Serbia, in Bosnia, even later in Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, etc. Of course, this is part of our lives, and we belong to the both places. Historically, Slovenia belonged to the Central European tradition because we were living for 700 years in Austro-Hungarian Empire, and everything is there, from architecture to the I don't know, many things which we could say, could call a way of life, etc. We were living more with Vienna than with Belgrade for many for hundreds of years, but our Slavic patriotic belonging was a great wish to join with the South Slavs. Unfortunately, immediately when we entered Yugoslavia, in the first Yugoslavia, Slovenians were a little disappointed because, for instance, in many hundreds of years of Austro-Hungarian empires, when Slovenians were fighting against Germans, especially in the 19th century against Germans, etc., nothing happened really brutal or something like this on the streets, etc. But except in the year 95. In 95, there were some demonstrations in Ljubljana, and Austrian police and even the army stopped this demonstration, and 2 people were killed in that demonstration. That was 905. I'm sorry if I'm boring, but if you are bored with history, but just to explain, I'm trying to explain. 2 people were killed. when Slovenians entered in Yugoslavia, that was state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. No other states were mentioned in that time. And there was strike of rail workers in Ljubljana, a big strike. That was first year of a new state. And gendarmerie came and killed 22 people on these demonstrations and on the strikers. So people are suddenly saying, where we are living? Now we were so many years in on that Austria, it was jail of nations. We said it's jail of our nation, etc. Now suddenly people are killed on the street, etc. So that was a kind of disappointment, but later, of course, it was part of our life, and we were living in two Yugoslavias. First, which was only 9 years was democratic country, then it was monarchy and monarchistic dictatorship, then occupation, we are talking about this in this book, and then it was communistic dictatorship till 1990. So Yugoslavia was also a kind of dictatorship, sometimes happier, sometimes not. After in the Yugoslavia was in the socialistic time more open than other Eastern countries, much more open, and was a little paradoxical country that from one side it was very free in culture, in literature, everything could be published. That was a big wave, a very important wave of black film in Yugoslavia and theaters. One of my plays was produced in 12 theaters of Yugoslavia, but it was very critical to the regime in that time. So it was very open in this, but if you want to establish a political party or a newspaper, then you were in trouble. You were immediately in trouble. So it was a kind of dictatorship which was better than others in Eastern Europe. That was my life with Yugoslavia. So when they asked me if I want to have a Balkan Prize, I was happy. So Slovenia, I was not happy. I said, okay, it's great for me. And
So, βλέπετε...
a little complicated answer.
Yeah. No, because it is a complicated situation, Dragoyancha. But καταλάβατε όμως πώς, από πού...
Yes, but you can understand now where he draws his material from two different cultures. Before giving the floor to the audience to ask one or two things, and if you don't want to, I will continue asking. Now, whenever I think of Drago, I think of two things. You have read those big Central European writers, Joseph Roth, for example, or Canetti. I'm thinking of this kind of writers, and then I'm thinking of Andrich and classic narrations and strong narrations by big Balkan writers. As an artist and as an author, which is the tradition that you believe that you belong to?
You exaggerate, of course, about this comparison. I'm proud if you think so, but maybe you are alone who are thinking this way.
No, yes.
Okay, I'm happy if you think so. I can say that I belong to this tradition. I don't know if Canetti, he is a little complicated, but I want to have a life in my novels. I was in the period when I started to write in Slovenia. That was time when how Yugoslavia was opened. We immediately had the wave of a so-called Roman Nouveau from France. That was something which some writers, Rudi Šeligo, you don't know the name, in Slovenia, and some others were following. And I was young, I was 20. I started to write this way. But suddenly I realized that it's boring. It's bored me.
But I fully agree.
Yes.
It is still boring, to read it today.
Yes. Yes, there were some famous authors, Rob Grier, Nathalie Sarraut, etc.
Like 3 books or 4
Oh, really?
out of a whole, yeah.
Okay.
Wait.
Okay, so it was a big wave, and I started to go this way. Then I realized I have nothing to do with it. I cannot write these things. I must write something with what is blood and flesh, and emotions and everything. So I went the other way. So if you say Ivo Andrić, I admire him really in every of his. So his realism from one side, and on the other hand, his. In his short stories, his capability, how to say story in few words, etc. He is really a great author. And on the other hand, he's reflecting time, and I hope so. I am doing the same. I am through these historical novels, half a century before. I am talking about us, about our time. About our feelings, our hatreds, our thinking about the problems of the world, even the politics, if you want. So, and Andrić is doing the same. Unfortunately, I must say, if you mention him, and you will understand. I wrote recently an essay a few months ago, or a year ago, when I learned that in Bosnia they threw Andrić out of the school texts because he's writing about Ottoman Empire as something what was not evil, but what was unpleasant, and his pictures are wrong, etc., etc. So I protested against it. I don't know if they publish in Bosnia, but they publish in Serbia, for sure. So, but it's not political question for me. For me, it is a literature question, because I said, if Kazantzakis and Andrić were talking about this period, about this special relation in one moment of history that these people were living in, whose brain and who is so clever that can say that something is wrong with this, then we can cancel the whole history, etc. And the many Nobel prize winners, etc. So Andrić is important also exactly about this, because he was describing the special atmosphere which is all the time in the air. It's from one side it's a kind of sweet, but on the other side it's violent also. What you were asking me about my novel, how to join the dark and the light passages or pictures of the world. So thank you for compliment. You exaggerated.
No, I'm not. But now, μπερδευόμαστε ελληνικά-αγγλικά τώρα ότι βολεύει. Ελληνικά. Θέλω να...
I'd like now to give the floor to the audience. If you'd like to ask a question to Mr. Jančar, we do have time. Please feel free to ask Mr. Jančar in any language you want, either in Greek or in English. There will be translation. I will continue since there are no questions from the audience. I'm always thinking that a writer goes back to the past because he is concerned and anxious about the present. I'm thinking about your novel. You're describing people at extreme conditions, and your novel shows how thin lines exist, how fine the line is for a situation to get out of control, to have a war, to have somebody killed. Everything is on a fine, thin line. In our time today, what is that is an issue of concern for you, politically or socially, for you, for Europe, from your position in Slovenia, in general?
Slovenian ambassador here. If I can, I don't want to spoil my country here on Europe, but no, of course, I belong to this country that we were dreaming about Europe, about democracy, etc. We were even fighting for this. I was part of a moving of this democratization moving in Yugoslavia, not only in Slovenia, but in the whole Yugoslavia. I was in editorial staff of Nova Revija, which was a kind of half oppositional review, which contributed a lot to democracy of Slovenia, etc. So we had big dreams about everything. And after a few years in a new reality, in a own state and a new democratic system, I realized that things are not going so well as we were expecting. And I said somewhere, and I wrote that we were dreaming about democracy, but we woke up in capitalism. So this was the reality of a capitalism, but which was not traditional capitalism, where some people were through 100 years gathering the money, working for this, etc. But it was over the night. Suddenly, some people were very rich and others were very, very poor. And that was first great surprise for me. And on the other hand, I realized what's going on also nowadays, not only in Slovenia, but in all Eastern countries, which came from a beautiful idea of socialism, which will bring everything to the and then collapsed completely from inner reasons, not only for foreign reasons, entered in the new era that we were dreaming on, but it was something else. All Eastern Europe is living with this, and suddenly we have a situation that the people who became owner of a former state enterprises, etc., are suddenly very influenced also in political life, not so much in cultural life, but in politics, in media, etc. So lobby groups with money, but this is apparently the law of capitalism, and this kind of capitalism that we were living in the kind of transitional capitalism, which is even worse than capitalism itself. So, as Winston Churchill said, that democracy is maybe the worst solution, but I don't know for better. Maybe for capitalism could be some better solution, I still believe. I don't know, another kind of distribution, etc. But you must ask Varoufakis about me. This not me.
I'm not sure about that, you know. But I would like to say that now.
Θα ήθελα να σας πω, if you don't have, no, there is a question from the audience. We'll give you the mic, just a sec. Hello. I'm very happy to be with you today and have the opportunity to meet you in person. I couldn't be here because I want to say that in your book, I saw her that night in the last chapters. When I was reading the last chapters years ago when I read them, I was crying and crying a lot as I was reading Veronica's story. I'd like to ask you a trivial question because I really don't know it. When did you realize that you are a writer? Where did you know that you are a writer and you start writing professionally?
Thank you. You make my day. You were crying. This is okay for a writer. So you felt the book and reality, but believe me, it was not easy to write these pages that you were crying by. I was maybe also on the edge of crying when I was writing this. when I realized that I'm a writer, I don't know. It was actually very, very, very soon. When I was in elementary school, I was bad in mathematics. I'm bad in playing footballs, in gymnastics, in everything. But every time when I wrote something in a Slovenian, teaching in hour of Slovenian, and we have a essay to write, and always the teacher came out and said to all class, now you will listen what Drago wrote. So that was a big moment in my early lives, and I realized that it's a kind of substitution if you are unsuccessful on all fields. Yeah, but in football I'm sorry to say.
The other thing,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. And it was a kind of substitution, and then I didn't realize that I will ever be a writer. Maybe I didn't dream that I will be writer of a president of republic, or I was more dreaming about Odyssey or something, Ulysses, and so traveling with somewhere with ships and so on. That were my dreams, not to be a writer. But suddenly I realized that it really helps me. And later, when I was difficult life situations, always then comes some book and some good review or some prize, etc. And it was easier. That was so. Writing became a way of my life, definitely. And maybe this is why I wrote too many books in my life.
Λοιπόν, στο σημείο αυτό είδατε ότι καμία ερώτηση δεν είναι τετριμένη. Αντιθέτως,
As you can see, there is no trivial question. When there is a trivial question, it might be complicated for the person who answers that question. I'd like to thank all of you for being here with us. The author will be in Castagnotti's stand, number 63, in Pavilion 15. Thank you for your attention.